Hey everyone! Wow, it's a lot of people. Yeah, it's so good to be here with you in London. Apparently, I was in London when I was 3 years old, but I don't remember anything. My mom said so I have to trust her. So Wahid was going to tell you a story. He decided not to, so I decided to tell you a story. So once upon a time in 2017, 6 years ago, in June, in nice spring day, we were having a party at NetApp because we were celebrating our 25th anniversary. And we were hanging out as colleagues. There's a DJ here, and it's a nice party, lots of cake. I love cake. And we were hanging out with my coworkers, and someone said, "Where were you in 1992 when NetApp was founded?" And so we went around. Someone said, "I was in middle school." Another one, "I was in college." Another one was like, "I was getting married." And then my turn came and I said, "In 1992, I started to learn programming and I learned Pascal." I was very excited. And then my coworker came next and he said, he was like, relatively new, fresh out of school. He interned with us for a couple of times. And he said, "In 1992, I wasn't born yet." I was like, oh my gosh. So everyone looked at him. What? I was like, yeah, in 1992, I wasn't born yet. And so I started thinking, well, here is code that he's working on that was there from before he was born. And that's the same code that was written when I was writing my first Hello World. And it got me thinking, what are some lessons that I learned looking at older code? Yes, it has evolved through the years. It's not the same code that was written in 1992. But what are lessons learned that I can share with you today? And the same lessons I can see happening at Splunk with much newer code. So what is NetApp? And what did I do there? So NetApp, like I said, was established in 1992. If you're a bank, a company, a hospital, any entity that has a lot of data that you want to manage and store and provision, backup, do disaster recovery, be compliant, encrypt it, all that kind of stuff, that's where NetApp comes in and helps you with that. And so they do data storage really well. And if you're running on cloud, that's fine. If you're running on-prem, then they will sell you these things called filers. And that's a picture of them. And you can buy as many as you want. They want to sell you more, of course, because you have a lot of data to store. And then on top of that, the main thing is Data on Tap, which is this really cool operating system that has all these cool features to help you manage your data. And so what did I do? In 2012, that's when I joined NetApp, and I stayed there for almost a decade, as Tanya said. And I was in this group that's called the Performance Engineering Group. And the goal of it is to make ONTAP performance better. So I worked on things like caching and high availability. And towards the end, I was working on this project called Astra that would help you take care of all your Kubernetes clusters, configs, and all Kubernetes resources, as well as the data to kind of be able to back them up and restore them as well. So let's transition to the lessons. So the first one is, beware, your design is here to stay. And so far, I haven't heard anyone yet says it depends. So whether your design is good or bad, yes, it can change, but beware that it can be there to stay. If you make a good design, it can help you a lot. If you make some bad choices, of course, we don't make bad choices given the input that we have, but it could over time prove to be not the best choice. So your design is here to stay. So let's give some, the good part of your design is here to stay. And let's talk about waffle. Not that waffle. This waffle. This is not my illustration, it's from Wikipedia. So at the heart of Data on Tap is this thing called waffle, which stands for Write Anywhere File Layout. So we want to store your data efficiently. And so if you have a small file, everything is saved in file, whether it is our internal representation of things or our customer data. So everything is a file, and we're going to store everything as a 4K block. That's a standard size. It makes things easy to reason about. Everything is 4K block. So if your file is small, great. It's going to fit in one block, all good. As your files get bigger, well, we need more 4K blocks. As we need more blocks, we need more metadata to figure out what these blocks are. And then as blocks get bigger, and like the files get bigger, we need more metadata. So we start adding more and more metadata. So at the bottom of the tree, we start building a tree. The leaf nodes are the actual data. And then the internal nodes, we call them indirect blocks, which are basically just metadata. And then we keep going up the tree until we reach the root. And that's your file system. So that's basically it. And it comes in really handy with this write anywhere file layout, because as you say, I'm going to not write the same block anywhere else. Well, not quite. But if I'm updating a block, I'm not going to write it in the same place. So let's think about this super easy, super small file system that has A, B, C, and D. So if you changed B and C, you're not going to update them in the same place. So instead, you're going to have a B prime and C prime, and you're going to save those in new places. And so now your new file system, instead of being A, B, C, and D, is going to be A, B prime, C prime, and D. And your old A, B, C, and D are still there, stored on disk or flash or whatever media you're choosing to store your data. And so the really cool thing is, here is your old file system still in storage, and we can really very quickly, very easily give you this snapshot. And so that design decision paid off for years, well, not even years, decades. So since 1992, this thing has been paying dividends. This pretty much free snapshot has been really crucial in how we manage data and how we efficiently do a lot of different cool features. And the most recent thing, it's not even like super recent, still like a few years ago, with Kubernetes. So we have a CSI driver called Trident, and Trident uses the snapshot technology to give you snapshots for your Kubernetes volumes. So super cool things. Well, the other part of it depends. The not so great. So again, over a decade ago, upper management said, we need to figure out this whole quality thing. We need to make sure that our quality is better. We have a great quality organization, but we need to shift left, everyone. So we need to write unit tests. Adding unit tests to code that is decades old is not easy. It turns out that at the heart of this 4K block thing, in memory, we have two main structures. One is waffle buffer that represents the 4K block, and one is waffle volume that represents basically the file system. And this thing is everywhere. It is referenced everywhere. Trying to abstract this thing to write unit tests is almost impossible. Also, no one really owns these structures. So good luck finding an owner to write unit tests and abstractions for that. So yeah, so that is the not so great part. So as you're working on designing something, or whether it's creating a new process within your organization or a new initiative, think about your design choices. Yes, they say, don't over-optimize in the beginning, but make sure you put a lot of thought as you design things to say, hey, is this going to stand the test of time? And if it doesn't, what's my plan? How am I going to fix it? How can I take this thing apart and plug something else that can stand the test of time? So lesson 2, assimilating startups is hard. Who works at startups? Yeah, if your startup gets acquired, it's hard. Getting assimilated into the existing company that's acquiring you is very hard. Let alone like whole like culture and HR and all that stuff. But the tech, it's good luck. So should I build or should I buy? So why even buy? So companies buy startups for so many reasons. Some of it is we want to acquire the talent. These people are brilliant. We want them to work for us. And we're going to buy their startups and give them a lot of money so they can work for us. And then there is another one where you want to squash the competition. That's not very friendly. And then there's another one that, well, we want to have that IP. We want to add your product into our product portfolio. And NetApp has acquired throughout the years several startups, and one of the ones that they acquired is Spinnaker. Spinnaker was a startup that we acquired in 2003, long before I even came to the US, long before I joined NetApp. And in the before times, before Spinnaker, not before COVID, the before times before Spinnaker, we used to sell you these filers that can be sold only in pairs. So you can have high availability pair, and that's all you can get. So if you want more capacity, you have to scale up. If you're scaling up, these things get very expensive. And if you want to scale out and add more nodes, you're out of luck. And so Spinnaker gives us that ability to be able to scale out and add more nodes and cluster these nodes together, and everything works seamlessly and nice, and you can have more data, and you have more disks, and things are so nice, and some sysadmin is very happy with that. But it took over a decade. They were like, yeah, we're going to buy Spinnaker, 2-3 years, we're going to have this ONTAP running cluster. They said, every time they try to have customers to move to cluster mode, customers like, yeah, no, we're not moving. It's hard. Data has gravity. So, well, okay, so here's a tool that is going to help you migrate your data from this old style of storage to this new cluster thing, and then you can have more expansion. And it took until 2015 to release the latest OS version that has only the new style. For the longest time, they were running 2 modes, the old style and the new style. And what we thought would take 2-3 years took 12 years. So if you're thinking about startups and combining it with a mothership, just be mindful. So the third lesson is modernize where it makes sense. So working on older code, not every new shiny object applies to you. So the OS mod asked me the other day, hey, what did you write in this old code? I wrote C and some Perl, because we use our QA modules, and all QA was done in Perl. There's some modernization now happening, but mostly Perl. So shiny objects. So we use Perforce, GitHub, GitLab, GitHub didn't really exist in 1992. So yeah, so they came later in 2008 and 2011, I think. And so we've been using Perforce. It's been working really well. So just because GitHub and GitLab are there doesn't mean that we need to move there. There's really no ROI on that effort. Is this like set in stone? Are they going to move to something else outside of Perforce? Maybe when the time comes and it's worth it, they would. So far, still Perforce. But then, 2 things that were totally worth the investment was our branching strategy and our continuous integration. You're like, well, okay, that sounds what's new. At the time, back in the day, that was new. So our branching strategy, we used to release a brand new, like a major version of ONTAP every 2 years. 2 years. And so customers were like, we don't want to get major features every 2 years. We want things faster. And so, to be able to deliver faster, we had to change our branching strategy. We used to have the main trunk, and then each team would work on their feature. And every 6 weeks, there was a team that would sync between all the branches and make things in sync. And so, works okay until you have a bug, and you have to wait for the next iteration in 6 weeks to get that bug fix. So that was kind of not fun. And so they said, we're going to have a main branch, and you're going to make small incremental commits to the main branch. I know, mind-boggling, right? So you're going to have small incremental changes to the main branch, and you can use feature flags. I know, like brand new stuff. And so, to be able to do that, we want to have something called continuous integration. This thing is like hot off the press. We need to use this thing because if you're going to make these code changes and you're going to break, everyone is going to pull off main and you're going to break main, and we're not going to allow that. So if you're going to break our tests, you're going to be auto-backed out. It's like, oh my gosh, that's like super cool. And that was totally worth the investment because we moved from 24 months for a release to 18 months. And over time, it's 6 months. And I think they're trying to move to a quarter. So that's really cool. OK, so now let's translate this to Splunk. These old lessons are still applying to new companies. So what is Splunk? So Splunk was established in 2003. A whole new millennium. And so while NetApp was storing your data, Splunk is helping you to make sense of the data, usually the machine-generated data. And I joined in 2021, and I work in Observability Suite. And this is a screenshot of one of our tools for observability. So lesson 1, your design is here to stay. So older Splunk, or like I guess the mothership, not the observability part, that's the newer one. So Splunk had this thing called HEC. So HEC stood for HTTP Event Collector. So if you want to send us your logs and stuff, you format them in this HEC format. And later, we in observability created this tool called Log Observer to help you, observe your logs and make things and make sense of it. And, Log Observer needed to support HEC format. And so this is the confusing part. If we want to throttle you, you're sending us logs and you're overusing your quota and we need to throttle you. If we're throttling you, we're going to return HTTP 503, which makes no sense, right? It's like service unavailable, you're being throttled, the service is alive and well, it's fine. But we still return 503 instead of 429. Why? Because 429 was introduced in 2012. So HEC was there from before 2012. That is a design that has to stay. It was no one's fault. 429 just didn't exist. So 503 made sense at the time, but we have to be backward compatible. And so Log Observer still supports 503 and doesn't return 429. All other things that observe things will return 429 except Log Observer, which returns 503. Lesson 2, assimilating startups is also very hard still. So the Observability Suite is a soup of 5 startups that were acquired between 2018 to 2020, and I work on one of them. And so since 2018, we've been trying to combine all the startups together to make the Observability Suite. Each startup provided bits and pieces. And so that is not easy either, because sometimes you're like, this isn't really going very well with the rest of the startups, so we're going to just split it a little bit and have its own feature. Or we can't really have all these code together in the same branch. And then there's the whole discussion of, are we doing monorepo or not? That keeps have to come up every few months. And then there's the dependency hell that you want to deal with. And so we're in 2023. It's been 5 years, and we're still not integrated in core Splunk. And that is something that we still need to work on. And so who knows how long that will take. And so, yeah, so assimilating startups is hard. In terms of modernizing where it makes sense. So one thing that makes a lot of sense to Splunk right now, and probably a lot of the observability startups or industry in general, is OTel, which stands for Open Telemetry. So remember this HEC format? All these observability companies would have their own format, which is not great for consumers. So if you're a customer and want to send data to Datadog or Splunk, you have to abide by their format, which is a pain in the butt for you as a customer. And so OpenTelemetry solves that and says we're going to have standardization. And who's talking about standardization? Yes. So I'm looking forward to that. So OpenTelemetry said we're going to have a standard. And then customers are really going to get the benefit of not being tied to any vendor for their observability. And so Splunk is investing heavily in that. And so they're sunsetting their SignalFX Smart Agent, which used to be what was there before OpenTelemetry. And so they're like, this is worth the investment. This is the shiny object that is worth our effort. We're going to invest heavily in it. We're going to support open source. We're going to open source all that. Which is really cool. So lessons to recap. So I had a lot more lessons, but I couldn't really fit them all in 25 minutes. So our lessons is be aware your design is here to stay. Assimilating startups is hard, and modernize where it makes sense. So I want you to take away these lessons and think how you can apply those in your company or where you work and where you think it makes sense. So whether you're a giant company who's going to acquire another startup, or you're a startup that's going to be acquired, or you want to go through some modernization and, again, doing more with less and figuring out what to invest in. So I want you to walk away with these, what is worth investing in. And that's my references. And thank you.